This is the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast with your host, Jason Peck. That's right, you Gooshbags. Welcome into the Week 7 edition of the 2022 Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast. I, as always, am your host, the commissioner of the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League, Jason Peck. I'm here by myself this week because, to be honest, I didn't reach out to James, but he never wants to do these things, so I'm doing it by myself. And it's on Thursday morning because I've been lazy and haven't done it. I don't have time in the weeknights, but during the weekdays, this week I was available, but I was lazy. So it's coming to you guys a little bit late, but we're getting there. We are getting there, and we are going to jump right in to the big news of the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League. Actually, the NFL, and it's sad news, as always, at the beginning of these podcasts. This week's injuries.
How is he running with a broken leg? Dog, I gotta do this shit. I put a team on my fucking back, though. My leg broke. I don't know how the fuck I'm running right now, though.
You're darn right. This is the injuries in the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League. We've got, let's start with the biggest one, unfortunately. Breece Hall, standout rookie running back for the Jets, tore his ACL and is going to be out for the year, unfortunately. Oh my gosh, unfortunately. We've got an ankle sprain for David Njoku. Unfortunately, he is out. They said it wasn't too bad, but then they came out and said it could be anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks out. So I got to find a replacement for my tight end. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of ankles this week. Mike Williams had a high ankle sprain as well. I think he's supposed to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. And Chuba Hubbard had some sort of ankle sprain, but I think that's minor, I suppose. So we'll have to see. DK Metcalf injured his knee. Originally, they thought that was going to be an ACL. Fortunately for him, it's not, and I think he was trying to practice on Wednesday. I don't think he did, but he wanted to. So it sounds like he should be okay. If he might miss 1 week, maybe 2 at the most, I think. So he should be all right. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who went out with a concussion. We'll see how he progresses this week. I don't know if he's going to play this week. And we got Allen Lazard with a shoulder injury, and I don't know the extent of that injury. It sounds like he might miss this week, so we'll have to see. So that is quite unfortunate. All right, we're going to move away from the sad news and move towards the happy news of the top scorer in the league. We've got Owen Tree scoring 130.96 fantasy points. That is pretty good. We're finally back up in the scoring this week. We had some higher scores this week, so that was great to see. We've had an abnormally low scoring year this year, so it's good to see some scores get back up there this week. Hopefully we can continue that trend staying up, because it's no fun when fantasy when you're scoring no points. Now we had some people with a lot of points, some people with not many points this week, and we'll get to that. But we'll move on to the head-to-head matchups. Last week's head-to-head results. You're darn right, and as always, we're starting with my matchup. We've got matchup number 1, Taylor Swift versus Go Clifford. Now we've got Taylor Swift took down Go Clifford 96.56 to 77.40 fantasy points. That's right. That's 2 in a row for Team Taylor Swift. I think the name change has helped. It was a more decisive victory this week. And yeah, I think, we had some good games here. I mean, not massive games, but people were solid this week. Unfortunately, I had to throw in Marcus Mariota in the quarterback spot this week because we had Jalen Hurts out. But fortunately, Hurts hopefully won't miss the rest of the year. But we have Marcus Mariota only scoring 12. We got Jonathan Taylor only scoring 12. Brandon Ayuk with almost 12. David Njoku with just over 10. Ramondre Stevenson with 19.8. He's been a man. Ramondre Stevenson. And the Dolphins D put up 12, which was significant as they were a later game. I think they played Sunday night. Oh, no. Was that the Monday night game? No, the Monday night game was the New England game, which I was happy about because Ramondre and the Dolphins D in the last 2 games of the week really pushed me up and over the top of that matchup. On the other side, it was kind of a similar story. We had Nick Chubb putting up 17.7 fantasy points. We've got Terry McLaurin putting up 15.8 fantasy points. So those were the 2 main studs this week. Nick Chubb is the number 3 running back overall. I don't think anybody would have seen that coming at the beginning of the year. Everybody else in your team, Lamar Jackson only had 10 fantasy points, and everybody else was under 10, and he only put up 77 fantasy points. So not so great. Not so great. The Bucs D had a rough time against Carolina, which is a surprise. The Bucs D should have destroyed Carolina, but their secondary kind of sucks right now. They have nobody playing. They're all injured. All right, on to matchup number 2. We've got Saquon Deshaun Johnson. I'm not putting any more emphasis on the Saquon or saying it wrong to appease the ne'er-do-wells out there. Now, this was a monster game from Benaya's team. He put up 125.56 fantasy points to the Young Hui's 93.32 fantasy points. Saquon's, they just had a fantastic game, or week this week. We had Joe Mixon with 16.6 fantasy points, Saquon Barkley with 15.5, Jamar Chase leading the team with 29 fantasy points, Chris Olave with 14 fantasy points, Will Lutz with 11 fantasy points. Just like all around decent scores. And then you had Aaron Rodgers who put up 15, who's okay. Chuba Hubbard on the bench with 14 fantasy points. So all in all, a great matchup or great week for Benaya's team. Overall, can't complain. Bengals D didn't really help. Gerald Everett hit 8, which was your second lowest outside of the defense, so not too bad. On the other side of the matchup, the Young Hui's, we had Jimmy Garoppolo had 16 fantasy points. Alvin Kamara had 14 fantasy points. Lenny Fournette had a rough week this week. He only had 3 fantasy points. Mike Evans put up 14. Mike Williams put up 18, and now, unfortunately, he's out. Pat Freiermuth is questionable with an ankle injury of some sort. He had 11 fantasy points, and DK Metcalf is also questionable, as I was saying at the top of the show. Let's see, DK Metcalf, let's see what the update. He missed Wednesday's practice as well. He wanted to practice, but they're taking it easy. We'll have to see. It doesn't quite say. How he's doing. So, might have to fill in with some rough players this week, so we'll have to see. You do have Josh Allen back on, so that should help your team, but overall, just an average game for the Young Hui's. Just not good enough. All right. Oh, wait. I'm so sorry. Benaya, I apologize once again. I always miss this freaking drop at the top with Owen Tree's top scorer of the week. You know what? We'll get to it. We'll get to it when we talk about the matchup, all right? I promise we're going to do the AH drop. No problem. But we're going to start with matchup number 3. We've got Cooking Some Lamb versus Team Chad Keen. Now, this was the matchup I was talking about where we didn't score too many fantasy points. Cooking Some Lamb did all right. They put up 112.6 fantasy points. That's pretty good. But on the other side, we had Team Keen put up 43.12 fantasy points. That's because this team is DePitts. He played Kyle Pitts and only got him 2.4 fantasy points. You did have 2 players get you double-digit fantasy points this week. Breece Hall, who is now, like we said, has an ACL, and Tony Pollard, who had 11.9 fantasy points. Everybody else was below 10. Everybody else was below 7.5 fantasy points. Not great. I mean, you had Christian McCaffrey who switched teams. Amon-Ra, who got a concussion. But he was limited at practice on Wednesday, so maybe he'll be back. Romeo Dobbs. That's a goose. A goose from Romeo Dobbs. Like I said, Kyle Pitts is always bad. I'm surprised you keep playing him, to be honest. I know he's like a keeper and stuff, but Kyle Pitts has not been good. Yeah, overall, just a terrible week. Jared Goff had 1.5 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts had 2.4. Brandon McManus with 2. Like, just a bad week. Severely underperforming this week. Just not good at all. On the other side, we had Josh Jacobs, who almost outscored Chad's team by himself. He had 35 fantasy points. We had Eno Benjamin, who put up 21 fantasy points. DeAndre Hopkins, who put up 15 fantasy points. And those kind of led the team. Everybody else was kind of meh. Amari Cooper had 8. So, like, you know, Geno Smith had 13. Not too fantastic. But overall, you know, just put a beat down by Josh Jacobs and Eno Benjamin. The running backs coming through for Neil's team. On to matchup number 4. We have the highest scoring matchup of the week, as we were saying. Where is the drop? Alexander Hamilton. That's right. We have the highest scorer, Owen Tree, who put up 130.96 fantasy points to Sir Lancelot's 126.24, the second highest scorer of the week. That is rough, folks. That's just sometimes how it goes. That's fantasy football in a nutshell for you. But both these teams put up great weeks. We have, let's start with the loser, Sir Lancelot, with Aaron Jones, who put up 24 fantasy points. Austin Eckler, who put up 30 fantasy points. And Zeke, who put up 17 fantasy points. And then you got solid games from Curtis Samuel. Tua only had 15. But, like, that was the majority of your team were those players. And then nobody played bad, really. I mean, you had a kicker put up 3, Ryan Suckup. And you had CeeDee Lamb with 8. But other than that, like, you know, you can't really complain with that matchup. The only thing is you should have played... No, you couldn't have played... Oh, yeah. Nope. Couldn't have played Deonta Foreman because all of your running backs scored more than that. He had 15. So, like, you just got to get your wide receivers together, man. Got to get your wide receivers together. Still a solid team going forward, so we'll have to see how the matchups go going forward. On the other side, Owen Tree, we had... Let's see. Wait, who led the way? The Cowboys defense led the way with 26 fantasy points this week. Once again, Adam getting beat by a massive defensive performance. 26 fantasy points. We had 2 interceptions, 5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries. I don't even think they had a touchdown. Let's see. It doesn't say they had a touchdown. Let's take a look. No touchdowns. 2 interceptions, 3 fumble recoveries, 4 forced fumbles, 5 sacks, and only 6 points allowed. That's insane. That is a massive week for not scoring a touchdown. So, yeah, that's massive. That is massive. But he led the way. We have Kyler Murray, who put up 17 fantasy points. We have Damian Pierce with 13, Devontae Adams with 13, George Kittle with 18 fantasy points. He was the second highest scorer. Yeah, everybody else was just solid. Nobody was below 9.5 fantasy points. Brian Robinson was your lowest scorer with 9.6. So just a solid week from everybody. Gave you a push over the top plus your defense. So that was a great game. Or great week from your team. Just a bunch of average scores and then one person booming. So that's fantastic. And then the last matchup of the week, it was kind of a lower scoring week. We had Jerry's Kids, which is Brandon's team, and Team Big Herbs, Buck Nasty, Aaron. Aaron took down Brandon 95.72 to 93.4 fantasy points. So not a high scoring week. They both scored less than me. But Aaron did take the matchup down. Aaron scored on the backs of Justin Herbert with 17.6 fantasy points. Travis Etienne with 18.4 fantasy points. So massive week. We have Justin Tucker with 13. We've got Tyreek Hill, only had 10. Antonio Gibson had a big week, surprisingly. 15.2 fantasy points. So that was a surprise. All of it was just enough to get you a victory over Jerry's kids, which was, Kenneth Walker was the majority scorer for your week. You had 28.7 from him. We have Derrick Henry with 15.3 fantasy points. And we've got, we did have a couple of gooses. We had 2 players goose this week. In this matchup, we have Michael Gallup, who had 0 fantasy points. I guess that makes sense because it's a goose. And then James Robinson, who got traded because I guess the Jacksonville Jaguars don't care about James Robinson because they drafted ETN and blah, blah, blah. So that was unfortunate. But he's on a new team, the Jets, and hopefully he'll be good going forward. You did win. Aaron did win without playing a defense, so that's impressive. And the Ravens D. Actually, Ravens D did pretty good for Brandon's team. He only had like 4 guys who put up good points, and everybody else was less than like 5. So, not great. But we're moving on. We're going to move on to the weekly awards in 1 second. I need my water. All right. The weekly awards this week, we had the best team in the league, a.k.a. the highest scorer with Courts. And as we said, the worst team with 43 fantasy points was Chad. The most efficient manager was Neil. The least efficient manager was Aaron. The highest points in the loss, as we were saying, was Adam. Lowest points in the win for the second week in a row was Aaron. The biggest blowout for the second week in a row was Neil over the terrible Chad's team. We have the narrowest victory for Aaron. I think that's also his second week in a row doing that. The overachiever was Courts, and the underachiever, obviously, is Chad this week with his 43 fantasy points. And for the power rankings that we have for this week, they only changed a little bit. We still have Ryo at the top. Ryo's team is fantastic. They've been on a roll, and Ryo's team's gonna win and win out. I can see it happening already. So giving you that juju, Ryo. Number 2, we've got Jason. My team is fantastic, as always. We got Adam at the number 3 spot. Benaya at the number 4. We've got Brandon at the number 5. Number 6 is Courts. Number 7 is Neil. Number 8 is Chad. After that horrific week, he got bumped down. Number 9 is James. He's been on a slide recently, so I've got him at number 9. And then number 10, as always, is Aaron, because he's got 4 quarterbacks on his team. I know, that's very controversial, but, that's just how it is. All right. Weekly waiver wire studs.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
That's right. These guys are all out of bubblegum in the quarterback spot for the waiver wire team that would kick all of our asses. We've got Daniel Jones with 28.2 fantasy points. In the running back 1 spot, Tyler Algier with 11 fantasy points. Running back 2 is Keontae Ingram with 10.7 fantasy points. Oh, no, I didn't do the math on this. Wide receiver 1, we've got Mecole Hardman with 26 fantasy points. We've got Marquise Goodwin at the wide receiver 2 spot with 20.7 fantasy points. We've got... I'm sorry, this is bad podcasting. In the tight end spot, we've got 17.7 fantasy points from Juwan Johnson. In the flex, we've got Paris Campbell with 18. We've got the defense, the Titans defense with 20, and Cairo Santos, so the Bears, with 18 fantasy points this week. So let me add this up because I did not. I apologize. I didn't do this in advance. I put the players down, but I forgot to add everything up. 0.7 plus 26 from Mecole Hardman plus 20.7. Who got picked up and dropped like a sack of potatoes? We've got 17.7 from Juwan Johnson. We've got 18 from Paris Campbell. 20 from the defense of the Titans, and Cairo Santos at 18. That's a total of 170.3 fantasy points. So they still beat us by 40 fantasy points. Guys, we got to step it up. We got to step it up, boys. It's no good. They're 7-0 for the year, so we got to step up our game. Step up our game. That's right. That's right. The audience hates that. So we are going to move on to the last segment of the week. Next week's matchup predictions.
I can see the future! I have to stop you from destroying my race!
In the future.
We already did that.
I knew you'd do that!
You're darn right, boys. That's right. We got matchup predictions for next week, and I was almost perfect last week. I was 4 for 5. The only one I missed was the matchup between Brandon and Aaron. I believe I picked Brandon to beat Aaron last week, and I was incorrect. So we're moving on to our first our matchups for next week. Matchup number 1, we've got Taylor Swift versus Sir Lancelot. Sir Lancelot. Let's see. It's a dead even tie right now, but I love my matchups this week. I've got Jonathan Taylor versus Washington, Raheem Mostert versus Detroit, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts versus Pittsburgh. It's going to be stomped. They're going to get stomped. Irv Smith versus Arizona, filling in for the hurt David Njoku. We've got DeAndre Swift versus Miami. We've got Evan McPherson versus Cleveland. Like, all great matchups. The only bad matchup is Christian Kirk versus Denver. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think my team has got this on lock. All right, Taylor Swift versus Sir Lancelot. Matchup number 2. Let's see if I can go 5 for 5 this week. We've got no longer Waddle Baby, Saquon Deshaun Johnson. I'm saying it on the pod. I know I said I wouldn't, but all right, this is a couple of heavyweights. We've got Saquon Deshaun Johnson versus Owen Tree. Owen Tree. That's right. This number 5 seed and number 7 seed currently in the league. Let's take a look. We've got Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, versus T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, Tyler Algier, and Brian Robinson. Unfortunately, your running backs do not look great, Owen Tree. They don't look fantastic. Damian Pierce is against Tennessee. George Kittle against the Rams, which is a tough D. I'm going to have to go with the old Waddle Baby for the victory this week. Owen Tree, I don't see, you don't have the depth for this matchup, so we're going to go with that. The next matchup is Team the Pits versus not Cooking Some Lamb. Versus the Young Hoes. That's what I had in the doc, but I forgot to switch these matchups. So currently, the Young Hoes has Mike Williams out, and Team Keen, they picked up the Titans D, which is a good defense this week. Fortunately, though, the Young Hoes, Rio's got some good wide receivers to fill in, a.k.a. Devonta Smith. Should be good to fill in for Mike Williams, and a good matchup this week. I think Christian McCaffrey's going to bounce back. We've got the Rams versus San Francisco. That might be a rough one for Matt Stafford. We've got Tony Pollard versus Chicago, potentially without Zeke, so that'll be good. Cooper Kupp. Kyle Pitts is not great. Michael Thomas is fine, but I don't know who you could throw in the flex to be better than that. But I think that Team Keen does take this one down. I just think we've got some rough matchups on the Young Hoes side. You got a couple of hurt players, DK Metcalf and Mike Williams, probably both out this week. And like I said, you got Devonta Smith, but the second fill-in might be a little rough. You got Damian Harris. Oh, you do have Josh Allen back. This might change my tune here. You have Josh Allen back. You have Alvin Kamara. You have Leonard Fournette versus Baltimore tonight. Mike Evans on the other side of that tonight. Or no, same side of that tonight. Hopefully they can step up their game there in Tampa Bay. You know what? I am going to go with the Young Hueys this week. That changed my mind. I forgot about Josh Allen. He's going to be a beast this week versus Green Bay. They're going to wreck he's going to wreck their shit. It's going to be a rough day for the Packers this week. So I'm going to go with the Young Hoes for that matchup. Matchup number 4, we've got Team Go Clifford versus Team Jerry's Kids. Sorry, I'm typing things in. You can probably hear it, but... All right, we've got Lamar Jackson, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, Terry McLaurin, Adam Thielen in a good matchup, Dallas Goedert, Chris Godwin in a good matchup. Probably get him out of your flex, just so you know. Get him out of your flex. On the other side, we've got Kenneth Walker, Derrick Henry, Justin Jefferson, Courtland Sutton, Mark Andrews, maybe. Gus Edwards was good. Oh, man. I'm going to have to go with Team Brandon this week. Team Brandon, Jerry's Kids, is going to take down Team Go Clifford this week. On to the other side, we've got, or the last matchup. Oh my gosh, I didn't do that transition at all through the entire thing. We've got Team Buck versus Cookin' Some Lamb. Now, this matchup, we got some rough matchups this week. Geno versus the Giants, that's going to be rough. Josh Jacobs versus the Saints. He's been good, so I think he'll still be good. We've got Eno Benjamin versus Minnesota and DeAndre Hopkins versus Minnesota. We don't know if James Conner's going to play, but you also have James Conner. So you got Devo versus the Rams. Those are all rough matchups. We've got Ertz versus Minnesota, Amari Cooper versus Cincinnati. Man, those are some rough matchups. And then on the other side, we've got Joe Burrow versus Cleveland, James Robinson versus New England. We're not sure how much James Robinson is going to play. We've got Antonio Gibson versus the Colts, Tyreek Hill versus Detroit. That's going to be a good matchup. Tyler Lockett versus the Giants, and ETN. That should be a good matchup now that James Robinson's out of the way. Fudge. I'm going to go with Team Buck. Buck Nasty. It pains me so badly to do this, but I think Buck's team is just better this week. It's just better. Got a good matchup where it counts. ETN and Gibson have good matchups. James Robinson, that's going to be a tough one, but David Montgomery did decent against the New England. We're just going to have to see how involved James Robinson is in the matchup. So, yeah, that's the picks. That's the picks. We've got the winners this week are going to be Taylor Swift, Saquon Deshaun Johnson, the Young Hoes, Jerry's Kids, and Buck Nasty 20. That's right, boys. That's it. That's all we got. And guys, it's been fun. I know this wasn't as exciting of an episode, maybe just me. So I was just flying through things. Yeah, I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you guys have a great week this week, and we're going to catch you guys next week. See ya. See you guys.